So, we're live. Thank you for coming in this busy time of plague and lots of accounting.
Yes. Oh boy. Yeah.
So, how long ago was it that I first started nagging you in the live chat of AA video live streams going, let's have a chat. Come on, debate me.
My memory is so bad. I mean, when you messaged me on Twitter, I could look it up. Let's see
Yeah.
how long ago that was.
Some point around Easter or so.
Yeah. Well, early June. It says he said, "Hey, when would you be available for the debate?" And I'm like, "What debate?" I don't remember things.
Yes, fair enough. Well, I can't remember names. So
it started that way for me, so be careful. It started where I just couldn't remember names, and then it just got worse. I couldn't remember dates. I don't remember. I just can't remember things. I don't know. I've forgotten. Well, I think twice in my life I've forgotten my own name. That's how bad it gets.
That's why we invented writing.
Yes. Well, my dad has the same problem, and he jokes about it. Just I carry my driver's license around so I can remember my name. Anyway, sorry, that's neither here nor there.
Back to the topic. So,
yes,
the aim of today, or this discussion, whatever you want to call it, is to try and have a good faith discussion on the thinking behind your beliefs as a young Earth creationist. You can ask whatever you want of me of mine of not being so, because I am, with reasonable internal consistency, hold both evolution, the Big Bang, and the tenets of Christianity as true. But I also believe slightly obscure things like oral and anal is not a form of sex. It only heterosexual intercourse is sex.
Mm-hmm. A lot of things depend on how you define the word.
Oh yes, exactly.
So
anyway,
and definitions of words do play a huge part in whether you believe that the Bible supports a young Earth or an old Earth, and that could get into the first part there. If you'd like me to go into it, I believe that the Bible is not. It doesn't work with evolution. You can't have both be true at the same time. You have to either believe one or believe the other. You can't believe both. If you look at... Go ahead.
I was going to say, so you think you cannot believe that God uses evolution as the mechanism for creation?
You can't believe it and still believe that Genesis is true. If you look at Genesis... I have heard people say that it was the day is actually an indefinite period of time. It's the Hebrew word yom. It doesn't have to be a 24-hour day, and that it's describing the evolution of things. He's not describing actual creation. One problem you have there is that the plants are created on day 3 and the sun is created on day 4. So if it was evolution, that's not going to work.
How did photosynthesis work?
Yes. Yes. Also, that the fish and the birds were created at the same time, and the land animals were created afterward. So again, doesn't work.
Well, the fish and birds being before land animals, as far as I'm aware, certainly the fish is consistent with the
evolution believes that fish evolved into lizards, evolved into birds.
Yes.
So you would have to have the land animals.
Yes, but the lizardness of dinosaurs is debated. But
they are land animals.
Yes.
But anyway, one issue you have, though, is...
You still have sea creatures before land.
Yes. So, see, some of it works. Some of it follows the same pattern. Yes, but enough of it doesn't. One issue you have, though, too, is, excuse me, the Hebrew word yom. It is very similar to our word day, which the word day can mean a 24-hour period, or it can mean an indefinite period of time. I mean, how many times have you heard your parents or grandparents say, back in my day, yes. Not in that accent, I'm sure, for you. But.
Well, no. But it is also the case, the Jewish day starts
Mhm.
from sunset to the next sunset, doesn't it?
It does, or it did. Yes. So
Yeah.
yes, that's why you would say evening and morning the first day, evening and morning the second day. The thing is,
Mm.
though, as I said, day can mean an indefinite period of time, and in the Bible you see where it does in Solomon's day, or in his day, or in Abraham's day. So that clearly refers to an indefinite period of time. Excuse me. However, there are ways you can tell in context, just the same way if we were talking, if we say, oh, someday we should do such and such. Clearly, that is referring to a single period, a single day we should do this, but it's not referring to a specific day. But it is still a day. If I say, oh, yeah, the first day of the new year, we should do such and such, that's clearly referring to one
That's
day.
specific, yes.
Right. Anytime you put a counting number, a number with it, the first day, the second day, the third day, it's always referring to a single day. Also, if you have time in there, you say, oh, on the morning of the 15th day, or the morning of or I'm trying to think of it, trying to put it in English without putting a number in there. But if you say in the evening of this day we did such and such,
Well,
first
even if you
this
say the
day
third
means,
evening,
what'd you
on
say?
the third evening of the week, it still works.
Right.
It,
I'm trying to think of using the word day and evening in the same sentence without a number. It's a little more difficult than I was thinking.
yeah.
But anyway, if you have something like that, that is clearly referring to one single 24-hour period. I mean, I guess you could say sunset on a time period. Oh, like the sun never sets on the British Empire. Clearly that's a time period. It's not a. But anyway, sorry, getting off track again. My point is, when you read the book of Genesis, it is clearly talking about 6 distinct days. It is not talking about 6 periods of time. So, plus, even a period of time in the Bible is not going to be billions of years, so it wouldn't work anyway. So all I'm saying is that you can't put evolution in Genesis and make it work. It doesn't work.
Well, because there is a little bit of wiggle room afforded to Christians about such matters that isn't that the Muslims don't claim. Is that we don't think that the Bible came down intact as it is on some tablet somewhere. There are
Parts
occasions
of
and
it did.
referencing. Yes, there are parts of it, like the Ten Commandments, but the
Yes.
whole Bible doesn't fall from the sky, brought down by an angel or something. It's
Mhm.
written by man through divine inspiration.
Right. Except the Ten
And
Commandments. Would you agree with that?
yeah, yes,
Yes.
I
Would you
will
agree? You would
give you
agree
that one.
that the Ten Commandments were written by the hand of God.
Yes,
Can we
it
read
says so
one?
explicitly several times.
Yes. Can we read the 5th commandment?
Okay. Just trying to-
I'm reading from Exodus 20, verse 8. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the 7th day is the Sabbath of the Lord your God. In it you shall do no work, you, nor your son, nor your daughter, nor your male servant, nor your female servant, nor your cattle, nor your stranger who is within your gates. For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth, the sea, and all that is in them, and rested the 7th day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it. In other words, written by God's own hand, 6 days.
Fair enough. That is, yes, that is an explicitly saying he did it in a week.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And he
Well,
even makes sure you understand it by saying you did the same. Work 6 days, rest on the 7th.
yes. Well, what I was going to say is, when if someone was going to have a dream, and this dream was, have you ever watched The Big Bang Theory? The TV
Yeah, I
show.
think I've seen one
Yeah.
episode, maybe two.
Okay. So in the intro of The Big Bang Theory, it's sort of got someone going, in the universe there was blah, 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 and it sort of has a series of visuals going through a big flash of light, molecules forming, and then it has a slideshow, incredible speed of pyramids and other such stuff forming.
Mhm.
And if you visualize what people describe of the Big Bang, let there be light fits it quite well, doesn't it?
Well, we started this from the beginning when we talked about it, that certain parts of Genesis do seem to fit with the theory of evolution.
Yes, with
But most of it does not fit.
man coming left. Well, so in the
Most.
beginning, God created the universe.
Hmm.
Fine. You need a first mover. Something doesn't come from nothing, and so what caused the Big Bang? I think many a child has asked and rarely ever got a satisfactory answer, if ever. I don't think anyone knows.
But it just doesn't. It doesn't fit. It doesn't fit
Well,
with Genesis.
what doesn't fit with
Genesis.
Genesis?
Genesis makes it very clear God created the earth in 6 days.
Yes,
And it's confirmed to us later by the Ten Commandments. It's confirmed. It was 6 days. I think it's in Hebrew too. I'd have to look it up. But anyway,
Yes.
but it is repeated in the New Testament somewhere. I don't remember where. I should have found that.
But there's still a discussion and debate amongst Christians about, is it literally 6 days or is it just time periods?
The reason they say that is the same reason that the Catholic Church attacked Galileo. The earth is actually described as a circle in the Bible. It is never described as flat. It just isn't. It is, and yet people in the church. The church is blamed for saying that. It wasn't
normally
the
a
church.
two-dimensional shape.
The church. The earth is also. It's never stated that the sun revolves around the earth. And yet the church said the earth is the center of the universe. The sun revolves around the earth, not because the Bible says it, but because popular science at the time said it. Whenever the church embraces popular science and tries to make the scriptures fit by saying things like, oh, look, the sun rose and set, therefore it means that the sun moves. No, it's moving from our perspective. It doesn't mean it actually moves. It's all of these things when you say, well, see, it could mean this. Oh, look, whenever you try to twist the scripture to fit the popular science of the day, you end up, you risk becoming, essentially the Inquisition.
You get the God of the gaps idea.
Yeah.
The religion only fits where our science isn't good enough. But
no, it's saying that science.
Well,
it's saying that science is truth. Sorry.
The fear of the church constantly moving to fudge itself to popular science is you just end up being the God of the gaps.
Okay.
Is what I'm saying.
Yes.
But the original guy who theorized the Big Bang was a Catholic priest. You could argue it's not
doesn't make any difference.
Well, no, it's not the Catholic Church changing its beliefs to fit the science. It's the Pope at the time was promoting the Big Bang because the consensus before the Big Bang was that the universe had always existed.
Which doesn't fit scripture either.
Which doesn't fit scripture or observation, with things like, if it had always existed and stars form, then why isn't the sky just one giant star? If you go back infinitely, there must, But anyway, if you visualize the scientific consensus of, you have the Big Bang, so a big flash of light, and then you have the Earth forming in the mass of stardust and things. You get meteorites falling on Earth to get separate water. So you've got separation of the heavens below and the heaven above. And then you get the fish and the fauna. And then you've got animals, and then you've got man, and then you've got, let's go and have a holiday. Let's have the weekend. But we could probably spend hours going, you can be religious and still believe in evolution, or the Big Bang is okay. You could have the Big Bang, but we're wrong about the time scale, if you really want to be weird and fudge things. But what puzzled me the most was the date. Because what's stopping Genesis 1 being correct and God creating the universe in 6 days with life on it, but the Earth being 1 million years old?
Because of genealogies.
The begats, I think someone once called it.
Yes.
So the dating of the universe in young creationism is purely based off the lists of so and so fathered him, who was the son of such and such, who was the son of such and such.
Not entirely, because we don't always have the ages for that.
Yeah.
There's also the records of the kings and all that, which gets very interesting because different when the kingdom split and you had the kingdom of Israel and the kingdom of Judah. See, I can't remember names. Oh boy, like,
yeah.
I don't know if that's right. I don't think
Anyone.
that's right. Anyway, no, I was talking to somebody the other day and I couldn't remember Abraham's name. I'm like, the guy that sacrificed his son. I mean, didn't sacrifice. I couldn't remember Abraham's name. I hate it. I can't. Anyway, so sorry if I don't remember something. It's not that I don't know it. It's that I can't. Well, I guess it's a sort of
fair
enough. Remember it. But the two kingdoms, because you have chronicles that follow one kingdom and kings that follow another kingdom. First and second Kings, First and Second Chronicles, and the way that they dated, the way that they calculated the years of the kings was different, because I think it was in Judah they gave the last year to the king who died, and the next king, his first year was considered the first full year that he reigned. So if the king died halfway through the year, it would say this entire year was the last year of so and so's reign, and the next year was the first year of his son's reign. Whereas in Israel, and I might have them backwards, they would actually say that give it to both. They'd say, so this was the last year of his reign, and it was the first year of the next person's reign. So if you calculate it, he reigned for 5 years and he reigned for 10 years. It wasn't 15 years, it was only 14 years, depending on when the king died. So it gets very interesting, and it gets also confusing. And then you have the one king who thought he was going to die, so actually handed the kingdom over to his son, and then he ended up not dying, and he came back and reigned for like 15 more years. So you look at the first year of this king's reign was actually like 15 years before he actually became king. It's very complicated, but it's fascinating at the same time. And I've never sat down and actually drawn it out myself, although I shouldn't say that, not with the genealogies.
Chart of the Old Testament one where it explicitly says the number of years Adam lived for and their children and so on.
Yes, you can.
Those are quite large numbers.
Mm-hmm. But interestingly, they are only large numbers until the flood, which the theory with that is because if you read it, it says that there was water above the heavens and water below the heavens. One theory is the greenhouse, whatever, that there was like essentially a vapor canopy over the earth. So the entire earth was like this one huge greenhouse. And that's one reason you had the dinosaurs that would grow so big, because most lizards, most reptiles will continue growing as long as they live. And if you have this ideal environment and they don't have natural predators, they're going to keep growing and growing and growing and growing and growing for 1,000 years. And then with the flood, it says that God opened the windows of heaven and the water came down. So what some theorize is that at that point it just essentially condensed the vapor canopy and it all fell down to earth. Which after that is when you get when you started getting the seasons, or at least the stronger seasons, which is why we can find woolly mammoths completely frozen in ice with with flowers frozen in their mouths. Yeah. There would have been no flowers there in the snow and in the tundra. So the seasons there was probably an ice age very, very quickly after the flood. It was just so things were literally frozen in place. So that's one theory. And of course, in that environment, things aren't going to live as long, because if you notice, immediately after the flood, the lifespans cut down to almost what we would expect to see them today. The first couple of generations still lived a long time, but it was just a dramatic drop off. So that's one theory.
You go from the hundreds to the human lifespans.
Right. Yes.
So, well, I'm just thinking, should we go back to what I said earlier about Genesis 1 and Genesis 2 having a squabble? Or should we? Anyway.
Okay. Yes. Okay. Where is it in Genesis 2 that it contradicts?
So Genesis 1, I'm just trying to find the right passage.
Well, yeah, Genesis 1 says that he created the hold on, I'll get back to it. He created light, that was evening and morning the first day.
Well, verse 24, then God commanded, let the earth produce all kinds of animal life, domestic, wild, large. You're
not speaking into your mic, you're very quiet.
Sorry. Then God commanded, "Let the earth produce all kinds of animal life, domestic and wild, large and small," and it was done. So God made them all, and he pleased with what he saw. Then God said, "And now we shall make human beings. They will be like us and resemble us. They will be power over the fish and the birds and all animals, domestic and wild, large and small." So God created human beings, making them to be like himself. He created them male and female, blessed them, and said, "Have many children so that your descendants will live all the earth and bring it under their control. I am putting you in charge of the fish, the birds, and so on."
You're definitely reading a modern version.
Yes, I hate the good news. It is terrible.
Oh,
Yes, the
that,
story about my Bible collection is when I was at school, in the prep school, so 11, 12-year-olds, we were made to get the New Jerusalem Bible.
never heard of that one.
Okay, well, it's a reasonably modern one that the editor was one of the monks at the monastery across the valley.
Mm-hmm.
So we felt attached to it. In fact, when we were a bit older, we could have even had the guy as our religious studies teacher if we were lucky. Very short guy, ethnically Jewish Catholic. But then in the secondary school, we were forced to get this claptrap and say, "No, this is the correct one. The syllabus demands this. It's the exam board." Virtually under knife point, not literally, but verbal knife point, was forced to purchase a Good News Bible, even though I didn't receive any good justification. And then a year or two later, I had some homework, which was asking about the prophecy in Isaiah to do with Jesus. Because several times it's references Son of God, Son of Man, and then in the New Testament it does the same. Quite frequently the disciples say Son of God, but Jesus himself only ever refers to himself as Son of Man, I think.
It depends on which translation.
Yes, I'm just being very frustrated because the Good News, I can't remember which way around it was, just referred to them all the same way, where rather than differently. So I couldn't actually answer the homework, so I had to pull out the old Bible that I was told I wasn't allowed to use.
Yeah, but
anyway,
many of the more modern translations, people think that social justice, all the social justice stuff, they want to came from feminism and all of that. It's like no, it came from Christianity, and it's people in Christianity trying to corrupt all of this. And that, I mean, yes, I remember when the news. Well, I remember when I first heard about the Good News Bible. I don't know if it was when it first came out or not, but yeah, it was. Terrible. Yeah, it wasn't quite called an abomination. It was just called
King James.
Sorry?
The only one I dislike more is the King James.
The King James is at least more accurate. It's harder to read by all means, but it's more accurate than the Good News Bible. So it's I prefer the well, I don't know if we need to get into all of that. We're going to get way off topic.
It's interesting. I'm enjoying it. Whether the audience does, the audience of one.
I personally prefer the New King James, and part of it is because growing up I liked old English writers. Like I liked Shakespeare and like Dickens and things like that. I loved those writings. So when I would read the New King James, it was similar style and similar vocabulary. So for me, it felt very familiar. I enjoyed it. The old King James,
poetic.
Yes. The old King James was a little too much for me. I still, it was nice, but it was like reading an original Shakespeare. It was a lot of work, whereas the New King James wasn't a lot of work, but still it felt like that. So I always liked the New King James. I remember it when I was in high school, like 15, 16 years old, our pastor said the New American Standard is the best version. So I got that thinking, oh, I've got the best version. And found out later, no, it really isn't the best version.
Because I think it was the King James, when it was printed with the estimate of the year of the different events on the pages. which
I've never had one that had that.
Because the King James was one of the early properly mass-produced ones that was sent around by the English missionaries.
Mm-hmm.
So it's well established. But it also does things like adds weird creatures to make things sound more fantastical in the occasional passages.
Well, the difficulty there is that some of the words don't have translations. When they talk about, well, the Nephilim is one.
Yes.
So I think modern versions actually just put Nephilim rather than, I think the older versions would said giants. So there are some words where people aren't sure what the word is supposed to mean. You could say literally it means giant, but in the context, we're not sure they were referring to giants. And some people say, oh, they were referring to angels, or they were referring to this or that or whatever. They were referring to half-breeds between humans and angels. And so there are so many, I think there where you have an argument in the translator with the translator saying, we're not sure what this means. And so they will put the best word they know in the English language. Or again, in the case of the Nephilim, they just put the Hebrew word. They're like, we have no idea what this means, or we have no idea what they're trying to communicate here. So we're literally just going to put the Hebrew word, which means absolutely nothing in English, just because we don't know what it means anyway.
Yes.
So when you have that, the unicorns, the sea creatures, whatever, things like that, I believe in those cases, it is the translators trying to figure out what was the writer saying, because we know what this Hebrew word means, but we're not sure what the author meant when they used it. And okay, we think this is what it means. Excuse me, which is always a danger when you're reading the translated works, which I think it's best if you can learn Greek and Hebrew. That's awesome. And I started learning Greek, and I learned some. I don't remember much now. That opened my eyes a lot, actually, learning Greek and realizing how wrong a lot of people were getting the things, because you read the translation and you think, oh, well, I know what that means in English, and you're like, well, in Greek, I mean, technically it means that, but that's not what they're communicating.
Yes, it's like the very different specific permutations of love. Yes.
Oh, and that can be so frustrating in English. It's because I've read other things that are translated. I read a book that was. It was a short story, and at one point there's this kind of romantic scene that two characters fell in love or something. Well, one character was in love and the other character wasn't. It was just friendship. And so the one said, "I love you," and the other says, "Yeah, I love you too." It's like, "No, but I love you something." And then he's like, "Well, I only love you." And the translation is just using love over and over. And I'm like, I know that there are different words they're using in the original language, and it gets so frustrating.
Platonic and the other one, or the other one.
Yeah, and I know in Greek there's agape, filio.
That's a
eros.
family one, isn't it?
Yeah, filio is brotherly. Eros is sexual. Agape is everybody. And I was thinking there were a couple others, but I can't remember them.
Yes.
And I'm probably mispronouncing them anyway. Anyway, sorry. I tend to go off on tangents in case you hadn't noticed.
Translation and the discontinuity between Genesis 1 and Genesis 2. So Genesis 1 quite clearly has all the animals before man, yes?
Yes.
Are they later in the day or the next day?
I think it's the same day.
Okay.
I believe. Hang on, let's get down to it. I'm pretty sure the sixth day. Yes, because the fish and the living the winged creatures were created the fifth day, and then all of the beasts of the field and all of that, and humans were created on the sixth day. So they were potentially created at the same time.
Very good, rather than "and it was good."
Right. So we don't really. It doesn't give us what order it was created on. It's just saying these were all created. The land animals and man were all created on the sixth day. It doesn't give us the order.
Yes. So when the Lord God made the universe, there were no plants on the earth, and no seeds had sprouted, because he had not sent any rain, and there was no one to cultivate the land.
But where are you reading now?
This is Genesis 2 from verse 5.
Okay.
Because you know how some Bibles have chapter headings occasionally.
Yeah, no, I'm following along.
Yes.
Go ahead. Yes.
Cultivated the land, but the water would come up from beneath the surface and water the ground. Then the Lord God took some soil from the ground and formed a man out of it. He breathed life, giving breath into his nostrils, and the man began to live. Then the Lord God planted a garden in Eden in the east, and there he put the man he had formed. He made all kinds of beautiful trees grow there and produce good fruit. In the middle of the garden stood the tree that gives the life, and the tree that gives knowledge of what is good and what is bad. And then it goes on to describing where it is. The stream flowed in Eden and watered the ground. Beyond Eden, it divided into 4 rivers. The first river is Pishon. It flows round the country of somewhere.
Yeah, I think verse 19 is where you were heading next.
Yes. Yes, it's not verse 18. Then the Lord God said, "It is not good for man to live alone. It will be a suitable companion to help him." So he took the soil from the ground, formed all the animals and all the birds. Then he brought them to the man to see what he would name them. And that is how they all got their names. So
Do you have your other version with you?
I can't find it.
Okay.
Oh.
I can see why you have this
hatred of the good news.
Yes, because it added a couple of words in there that are not in, as far as I can tell. I wonder if I can, because I know that I can do a comparison here. I think. Because I'm reading the New King James here, and I want to see whether I can do a comparison to see if it's similar to other versions. Oh, come on. No, it's not going to give me. Oh, here we go. Yes. In all English translations. Okay. Yes.
Even though
I see a couple of them that have the words that you use, but most of them don't. In the verse 19, yours says, therefore, says, so God created, meaning therefore. So following from the previous one, he said, we should have something suitable for him. So he did this. In in the New King James and what it looks like most of the other English translations, it says and, not so. And out of the ground, the Lord formed every beast of the field. It doesn't mean he did it afterwards. He could have done it before. He could have done it at the same time. We don't know the time frame there. So just as I said with Genesis 1, it says he made all of the animals and he made man. It doesn't say in what order he did it. It just says that it all happened on the 6th day. So in Genesis 2, it also says he made man and he made the animals. It doesn't say in what order.
So Genesis 2 is just going into detail on the 6th day.
Right.
Okay.
So yours is written in such a way that it sounds like he did this and then he did this because he did this because he did such and such, which would imply that he did this one after the other because one followed from the other. But it looks like most versions don't say that. Some of them do have that. I don't know if these are modern translations that have the so.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, be as verbally abusive to the good news as you want.
Yeah. Do you know what the first red flag there was for me? The first way I knew that it was like, that's a very modern translation.
Go for it.
When it said he created human beings rather than he created man.
Oh, yes.
I'm sure that has no gendered language in it. Or, well, no generalized gendered language. It's not going to say mankind or God created man. It's going to say God created humans.
Well, man plural has no gender.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know. I agree.
A twist.
Ugh. Anyway, sorry. Don't need to get into that. Yeah. I hate it when you have a translation, because I mentioned when you read the English versions, you are subject to the will of the translator to some degree, which is one reason I think it's good to read multiple translations.
Yes.
excuse me, it's kind of like reading various news sources. They're all talking about the same story, and as long as they're all attempting to be honest, the stories could occasionally contradict each other, but you'll get a broad general, you get a broader view. So it's one reason the Gospels are so fascinating, because it's told from 4 different perspectives. They all see different things. They all experienced it differently. They all interpreted what was going on differently, because it's 4 different people telling the same story. And actually, in the case of Luke, it's a lot more than 4. But it's anyway. In the same way, reading the various translations, you get a better idea. I feel like you can get a better idea of the text, because you're seeing how different people interpret what was said. So if you ask 5 different people, oh, what did this person say? And they all tell you what they heard, you can usually glean from that what was actually said. The more versions you get.
Yes. There's a reason why we don't ask one witness in a court case.
Yeah.
So
the Hebrew version, I believe, is truth, and the English version, I believe the honest ones, they are also truth, but it's hard. But it's easier to misinterpret the English because you're reading a translation.
Yes.
Anyway,
anyone who's used Google Translate can say meaning is lost.
Yes. The difference there is that it's a machine doing it, not a person who is painstakingly, with sweat and tears trying to do the best they can.
Have you ever watched those YouTube videos where someone claims that they've had a song and they bounce it around Google Translate through different languages and then play the result?
Yes.
And then sometimes you can go, oh, I can see where this is. And then other times it's just nonsense.
Yeah. Yep. Oh, excuse me. The nice thing about the Bible is that it's only when you read it, you're only reading one translation, not multiple. There are multiple translations available, but it's not multiple steps of translation. It is only one. They take the Hebrew or the Greek and they translate it to English, and so you'll have multiple people looking at the same original, translating it, but it's only ever one time being translated. I remember I used to hear atheists say that in college, like, oh, it's been translated so many times. I'm like, yeah, but each one is only one step. Every time, it's like they take the original and then they translate it once. That's it.
But they do
not translating it back.
Find ancient manuscripts from closer to contemporary that might be a different language, and then sort of cross-reference their translation with the other translation that's closer to the period, and go, maybe we need to rethink this.
Yes, but they actually have it
that it's translated from.
They're not translating it from the translations, though.
No, but they're comparing it.
They'll compare translations to their own translation, yes. But they're not translating from the translations. No. They're translating from the Greek and from the Hebrew.
So, something I was taught in religious studies way back when as a sproglet was that the large ages quoted in the genealogy of Adam, I think that's what it's called, in Genesis at some point, is meant to be a sort of like a subtle notice of this is a symbolic message, don't take us literally.
That makes no sense.
Well,
to me.
Fair enough. Because this is myth, this is the legend, here's lessons to be learned, rather than you can literally find the age of the universe by counting how many centuries Adam took before having another child.
Which it doesn't say, by the way.
Does the genealogy of Adam connect to the genealogy of kings? Is it continuous? It is.
Yes. Well, sort of. No, not exactly. I shouldn't say that. The genealogies in the book of Genesis don't, because they only they go through the lifetime of Moses, and the kings didn't come about until the lifetime of Samuel. So no, so it doesn't go to the kings exactly. The genealogies. I'm trying to think where the genealogies are. I don't remember actually. I think it's in the end of Genesis. Oh boy.
There are some very exotic names in there.
Oh yeah, I love some of the names. Yeah. Although my siblings would, yeah, they told me I wasn't allowed to pick the names of my kids. My husband would have to pick them because Oh, here we go. Yes. Oh, but that doesn't give the dates.
What's the one where I think it's describing the 12 tribes, or it's something else, where it seems to basically have a child, and then it goes, and then racial stereotype or profession, different child. Stereotype.
Here we go. Wait, I think I found it. No. See, this doesn't give the dates. It gives the names of. It says, yeah, here's the genealogies, but it doesn't say how old they were. I can't remember where it is where they had how old they were. Oh wait, here we go. I think yes, Genesis 5, but this one only goes to Noah. See, I think that there are multiple genealogies, but yes, in Genesis 5, it goes from Adam to Noah, and then I can't remember. I don't remember where they all are, but it doesn't.
For example, is there any genealogy anywhere that goes from Noah to Abraham, for example?
I believe so. Now, in Luke, you actually have the genealogy go all the way from Adam through to Jesus, but it doesn't give their ages. So you can trace it, get father to son or daughter to son, depending, all the way through to
and reference it to the age other bits in the Bible.
Right. So you do have that direct line. You just don't unbroken line. You just don't have the ages there. So to get the ages, yeah, you do have to go around different places. Yeah. Let me see if I can.
I thought the one in Luke about Jesus just went back to King David.
I might be wrong. Maybe it's Matthew. Where's for the genealogy? Okay, it's not there. It's in one of the Gospels.
It was the reading in church, and it was the genealogy, and everyone falling asleep. You just sit there as a 12-year-old listening to a list of names for however long.
See, yes, I know. Oh, here we go. Okay, so Matthew goes from. Oh no, Matthew only goes from Abraham. Where I can't remember now. But yeah, I liked the genealogies, but I think it was just because I liked reading the Old Testament, and because so I knew
throughout history have been used to give important people sort of credibility.
Mm-hmm.
And famously often fudge the genealogy to go, and then your God from your culture was the father of so-and-so, who was the grandfather of this person that is the head of our invading army.
Yeah, okay, so Luke does have it all the way Adam to Jesus. Yes. Except that he goes backwards. Like Jesus, he says, being as was supposed, I love that, the son of Joseph, the son of Hele, the son of Matthat, the son of Levi, of Melchi, and so he goes backward all the way back to Abraham, to Abraham and then back to Adam. Whereas Matthew, it looks like, starts at Abraham and goes down to Jesus. Yes. Yeah, Luke doesn't mention the mothers. I liked Matthew better, even though Matthew's is longer, just because it puts several of the mothers in there, which they're the interesting. Well, they're quite often the more interesting ones, just because of the stories. Whereas, come on. Oh, well. Yeah, again, I liked the genealogies because I liked the Old Testament, so I knew the stories of these. Yeah, one thing that's you wouldn't get necessarily before, but okay, reading through the genealogy in Matthew, where it says Salmon begot Boaz by Rahab, and Boaz begat Obed by Ruth. So most people know the story of Ruth, And so you know Boaz, who was the one who married Ruth. And yet it's through this genealogy you realize that Boaz was the son of Rahab. I mean, which to me was just amazing. I'm like, that's so cool. You know the story of Rahab and the red rope, I assume. Or maybe not. Okay. Do you know who these people are that I'm talking about?
It's been years since I've dived into the Old Testament.
Okay, but it's, yeah, you know who Ruth was. Maybe.
Remind me and the viewers.
Okay, yeah, so there was a man, and there was an Israelite man who had two sons, I think, and yeah, two sons and his wife, and there was a famine in Israel, so he moved to, oh dear, land. I think the Hittites. I can't remember. He moved to another land where they had food. Took women to be the wives of his sons, and then the man died, and then his sons died in that land. So then Naomi was the wife, and so she decided to go back to Israel because she had family there, and her daughters-in-law were going to come with her. And then she's like, no, look, I'm a widow. There's nothing I can give you. I can't provide for you. You guys should just go back to your families. And Ruth said, no, I'm going with you. And so Ruth came back with her and helped her. Ruth went out to get food to provide for them, and she wasn't even an Israelite, and so she was. But then she eventually married Boaz, and it was, yeah. Anyway, it's interesting because she's not an Israelite, and yet she's held up as this. I wouldn't say paragon of virtue. I don't know what you'd say. She's just held up as just a great woman.
The Good Samaritan.
Yeah, except the Samaritans were half Israelites. They were kind of half breeds, which is one reason they were hated. So, but Ruth was just completely not of Israel at all. And it's just interesting that she married Boaz, who Boaz is a son of Rahab. Rahab was also not an Israelite, or not born. She was one of the from Jericho, actually. When they went in to spy out Jericho, they said that they went to the house of a prostitute who was Rahab, and she protected them when the soldiers were coming to trying to find the Israelite spies. She actually hid them and told them, "Oh yeah, they came here, but they already left. They went that way. If you hurry, you can catch them." And so soldiers go off, and then she comes and gets them. Here it takes. She tied a rope from her window because her home was actually in the wall of Jericho, and I think it was Jericho. Oh boy, if I've got the city wrong, I'll be bad. But I'm pretty sure it was Jericho.
There's one city, I can't remember its name. It's not Jericho. It's got a more obscure name, which there's no doors on the ground floors of any of the houses. All the entrances are on the first floor.
Well, that wouldn't be in scripture.
Well, I was just thinking
that
maybe
might be historically.
Well, it's a historic archaeological find, and I was just thinking, maybe it's the same town, or
could be
similarity in the ancient world of
yeah,
people getting in and out of houses through a upstairs window.
Possibly. But no, in her case, it was helping them escape. And she said, look, my family and I worship the one true God. Because people had heard of the exploits of the Israelites and their God that had done all these things. So there were people outside of Israel who also worshiped God. Not many, as far as I know, but just because they're like, whoa, this God is very powerful. And so she said to them, when you take over the city, please spare me and my family. And they said, we will. Put a red rope, hang a red cord from your window, and so we know which place to go to, and we will save you. And so when they took over the city and destroyed it, they saw the rope, they went to her place, and they got her and her family out and brought them over to Israel. She married a man, and it was her son who was Boaz, who eventually married Ruth. In the Old Testament, it does not tie those two together, as far as I know. So it's only through reading Matthew that you realize, oh, wow, you start to see all of the stories in the Old Testament tied together, and it's fascinating. So for me, I loved the genealogies because it was taking all of the old stories and tying them together. So here's how they fit together. So I always liked the genealogies. Of course, not all of them. I mean, some of them you have, where is it? Like Aminadab and Arphaxad. Those are two names that the genealogies that I really liked. And I was told, no, you cannot ever name any of your sons Aminadab or Arphaxad. That's horrible to name a child nowadays. But I don't remember where they are in there. Anyway, it's not important. And it doesn't matter anyway. I don't have kids. So
That's what the dragons are for.
yes. Although they've got, oh boy, the baby dragon. She was 6 months old before she had a name because I couldn't come up with a name that actually fit. And then I was babysitting this 5-year-old, and he asked, "What's her name?" I said, "Well, she doesn't have a name because I can't come up with." And he says, "You should name her Rose." I'm like, that does not fit her, but okay. I didn't say that to him. Oh, okay. Well, we'll call her Rose. So yeah, now I call her Rosie, and it does not fit her personality at all. She's a mean, nasty little dragon, bad-tempered. But that's Rosie.
You also discover things like Jared is not a weird modern name.
Yes. Oh, I tell you what's fascinating. My grandmother, one of my grandmothers anyway, she kind of jumped around to different religions, mostly Christian, but like Jehovah's Witness and Catholic and just different ones. And so one year while she was Catholic, she was going to get one of her sons, I guess, christened or whatever it is. He was a young man, but he was old enough to probably, like, I don't know how old he was, but he was young. But he didn't want. They had to pick a biblical name for him, and he didn't want the typical ones. So they were reading through the New Testament, and they found one of the friends of Paul who actually helped him was named Jason. And he's like, "Oh, I like that one." Yeah. So he said, "Okay." So when they went to the priest and they said, "Well, what name did you pick?" He said, "Jason." And the priest's like, No, it has to be a biblical name. I'm like, it is a biblical name. It's right there in the New Testament. But I mean, when you hear Jason, you don't think biblical. At least I don't. Or
Well,
wouldn't have.
The Argonauts.
What'd you say?
You think sort of the Greek mythology, Jason and the Argonauts, or
I had never heard it. I had heard it in context of like movies and whatnot. And it was Jason was always the cool character, so I just thought it was a modern name growing up. Anyway, we are way off topic. So I think that when it comes to whether when it comes to actual scripture, evolution does not fit in scripture. It doesn't fit the biblical accounts. It doesn't fit the plain reading of the text. Sorry. It also doesn't fit theologically, because no one and nothing, as far as the animals go, died before sin came into the world. Again, by the theology of of what's emphasized in the New Testament and the Old Testament, that death came into the world by sin. So if you have evolution, you had mankind living and dying long before sin entered the world.
Where does it say there was no death until sin? Because I'm aware
it's in the New Testament. I'm going to have to find it.
Pain in childbirth due to original sin. And I've heard people joking about the lack of death and saying if there was no death, you'd have a pile of dinosaurs in the Garden of Eden by the time that Adam and Eve died 900 years later.
No, but they were cast out of the garden long before that. Okay, so it's in Romans. Therefore, just as sin entered the world through one man, and death through sin, so also death was passed on to all men, because all sinned. I thought it was elsewhere also. Yeah, it looks like in 1 Corinthians also. For since death came, for since by man came death, by man also came the resurrection from the dead. Yeah. Okay.
Because yes, for evolution to work, you need death.
Yes.
Otherwise, there's no evolutionary pressure. You just get diversification and no actual speciation.
Right.
But
yeah. So again, it doesn't fit this. It doesn't fit the text. It doesn't fit the theology. If at some point we wanted to have a discussion on the science, that would be a completely different discussion
Yes.
could also be interesting.
Things like, why is there so much soft tissue left in dinosaur fossils?
Mm-hmm.
Which did throw in a big curveball for a while.
Yep. That was one thing I had a discussion with an atheist friend of mine who used to be. We went to the same church for years, and then he just left and went full on atheist. And we were discussing evolution, and I mentioned the fact that evolutionists in the beginning, they had, here's the theory of evolution, and they said, well, and people were saying, okay, in order for a theory to be scientific, it has to be falsifiable. There has to be some way you could disprove it, because if it's not possible to disprove it, then it's not science. It's it's a religion. And so they said, well,
like the multiverse.
It's what?
Like the multiverse idea.
Yeah, that's impossible to disprove. So the theory of evolution, they said, here's the theory of evolution. If we were to find this, this, and this, that would completely disprove the theory, and then we would know we were wrong. They found it. So then they said, see, no, we didn't calculate correctly. See, that can work with evolution. So they modified the theory. See, it's still correct. But if we were to ever find this, then we know it was wrong. Well, then they find that. Like, well, but see, no, okay. And every time they find something that goes against the theory, they do not say the theory is wrong. They say, well, how can we make that fit with the theory of evolution? And I pointed this out to my friend, and he's just like, well, yeah, but it's because evolution is true. So anytime something contradicts it, we just need to figure out, well, how can we make that work, because evolution is true. Like evolution is non-falsifiable to the people who believe it.
It is falsifiable. Half the reason why it is so well cemented is because would be easy to falsify, but hasn't.
Every time evidence arises that contradicts evolution, they do not believe. They will never throw out the theory. They will modify it to where, we'll make it work. So no, it's not falsifiable. There is nothing you can show that will ever disprove the theory of evolution.
Yeah, there is, just not in the eyes of some people. It's like almost any idea.
What could you show? What could disprove the theory of evolution?
Ooh. Hominid and dinosaur skeletons, both dated to the same era. That will be
They found that.
giant spanner.
They found actually a human skeleton and a dinosaur skeleton in the same rock layer. And
can you send me a link to that? If you say that, really would send a massive spanner in the works.
The problem, one difficulty here is that a lot of I researched this back when I was in college, back when the computers in our library actually connected to the internet. These computers were text-based. You did not have video. They didn't even have mice. You did everything with the keyboard. This was the internet in my day. Most of what I studied came from magazines, from newspapers, because you would actually go to the library and you could you had the microfilm. I don't know if you've ever seen. Yeah.
I've tried using the microfilm, but the uni computer was being iffy.
Yeah, well, I didn't have. It wasn't even a computer with the microfilm. I was an actual literal thing that you would put in a machine and you would twist it. Like if you see the
thing that gets scanned, but they had a failed attempt at digitizing it, so you'd read it on a computer plugged into the machine.
Oh, wow.
Then the genius idea, because no one was using it, uninstall the software from the computers that used the machine.
Yeah, I can remember it because there were people in a book referencing this newspaper article, and so I would go and get that little microfilm thing and put it into the machine and twist the knob, like that one video game, like about We Happy Few or something. It starts out with that. I'm like, I remember that. I actually use that stuff. And you get to the right place, and then you would say print it, and it would scan it and actually print it on the old dot matrix computers. Dot matrix printers, if you remember that. Anyway, all that to say, I've researched this so long ago that I would not even know how to get the data now, because many of this stuff it wasn't digitized. You can't say, oh, well, here, look it up on the internet. It's not on the internet. And things that don't go along with the theory, they're just dismissed as hoaxes. And so there was, I can't remember. picture I saw that was published in a magazine article long before Photoshop ever existed. It's like, it wasn't. You show it now, people say, "Oh, it's fake." It's like, no, this was before you had that. Oh boy. Anyway, so I don't have the sources now, and I don't even remember most of it. I remember like bits and pieces again because my memory is so bad. But oh boy. And that's the reason it's hard for me to go into this again, because it's from so long ago.
So,
oh boy.
How did Cain and Abel find women?
You're not going to like the answer. But yeah, they had sisters,
Yeah, it's just they're not emphasized as much. Whereas
Adam lived for 900 years and had plural sons and daughters.
Yes.
I mean, he could have easily had 500 kids. We have no idea how old Cain and Abel were when Cain killed Abel. Given that they were living for 900 years, they could have been 500 years each. They could have had kids, grandkids, great-grandkids when that happened. We have no idea.
Yes, because it just focuses on a few, like Enoch.
Yeah. Well, and Seth, when it says, one thing that people will put out there, they'll say, oh, well, I've heard people say, oh, well, it had to have been only them, because then Eve had another son and named him Seth and said it's to replace it's to replace Abel, whom Cain killed. And I'm like, no, if Abel was literally the first person to die, the first human to die, that would create a huge loss for them. So even if she had 500 kids and 1,000 grandkids, great-grandkids, you lose one. You're like, if you had never lost anyone, ever. So almost every human has lost someone, either a friend or a relative or a family member.
By the time they reach a certain age, anyway.
Right. So if she had never lost a family member, ever, and then my son is dead, and then she has another son, and she's like, it's like, oh, it's as if God gave me this one to replace the one that is gone. So anyway, there could have been thousands of people on Earth by the time Cain killed Abel. We don't know. And interestingly enough, sibling marriage wasn't forbidden until somewhere around the time of Moses. Abraham and his wife, Sarah, again, I'll forget just random names, but they were actually half siblings. They had the same father and different mothers.
Oh, they're Egyptian.
No, they were.
They were much worse.
But again, it's like siblings would marry. Even David,
Yes.
Two of David's kids, when one of David's sons wanted to marry his half sister, and his half sister actually told him, "Ask our father, and he'll let you marry me." So even in the time of David, you apparently still had siblings marrying each other. It surely wasn't normal, but it would happen.
Well, famously, the the bit in the wedding ceremony, any objections?
Mm-hmm.
The two main objections that they're listening out for are it's incest and they're pre-married but secretly. You weren't aware of it.
Yeah.
Those are the two ones.
Yep. Oh, it's I think you have to be careful nowadays. I have an aunt and an uncle that what I have been told is that they fell in love, they got engaged, and then found out when the families met each other, they realized they were second cousins, and they did not know that. Just because my family is huge, so there's so many that don't know each other, and these two didn't realize they were actually related. But second cousins nowadays, that's as close as you can be. You can marry your second cousin. You can't marry your first cousin, but you can marry your second cousin. So they were like as close as you can get to not being allowed.
Well, I think in the UK, you're allowed to marry your first cousin, but it's certainly frowned upon by everyone around you.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's as the DNA breaks down, the further along we go, your DNA does get worse off, and you have to go further and further from the initial source.
Twice,
right?
Going that close is fine, but if you're cousins for a sustained period, you start running out of grandparents.
Right. And if humans had the perfect DNA at creation, it would make sense that they could marry their siblings because there wouldn't be the genetic breakdown that we see today. And I think that give it another couple thousand years, we won't even be able to marry second cousins. It'll be too closely related. You'll have too many genetic problems with that. It's just a theory. I don't know.
Well, certainly if the genes were perfect, you wouldn't have any recessive, you might not have any recessive genes that are linked to problems.
Mm-hmm.
So if there's none of that, you don't have to worry. And then with mutations, you start getting recessive genes. And then two people with the same two recessive genes procreate. And, oh no, we've got the first congenital disease or whatever it's called. Heritable disease.
Mm-hmm. You would think that if we had been around for billions of years, reproducing just on this rock with as many people as there are, we would all be horrific mutants.
Well, there is the people who sort of go and analyze people's DNA, compare one person's DNA, but do it on a big scale, have said there's been several bottlenecks in human genealogy.
Like Noah?
Well, yes, that would cause one. But there's two or three, but even when those ones, they're saying they went down to 1,000, they're not down to one. So, on a slightly different note, which I brought up at the beginning, is the archaeological record when it just comes to humanity and early settlements. So you're saying, based on the genealogies and how certainly with the early ones, they've explicitly got dates and they've got years with the kings and so on, you can get an age of the world. And then by saying the world was and the universe was made in 6 days, therefore the universe is that many thousand years old. Would obviously carbon dating in things gets more unreliable, and other such radiation-based dating gets more unreliable and less precise as you go further back. Because each little
carbon dating was the big thing back when I was just starting college, and before I graduated college, it was no longer accepted by any reputable scientist. And I've noticed that recently it's making a comeback, but that was dismissed by scientists back 20 or so years ago when they realized that the carbon in the atmosphere was not a constant. They assumed it was constant. So you have all this.
Yes, that would cause issues for the method.
Right. So nowadays it's making a comeback. But I looked at that when people say, "Oh, the carbon dating." I'm like, that was debunked decades ago. What are you talking about?
But there are other isotopes that are used, like lead, for example.
Yeah.
Anyway.
But it's just, anyway. So, yeah, nowadays, anytime somebody says, "Oh, but how do you address carbon dating?" I'm like, what are we talking about? Debunked science here. Come on. Anyway, it's annoying to me. But, yeah. Anyway, sorry, go ahead.
Many of the locations in the Bible, unsurprisingly, are the same sort of part of the world where mankind first settled down and built cities. The Fertile Crescent. So you've got Palestine, you go up, and then it comes back down the Euphrates and other such rivers. And one of the oldest settlements big enough for us to call a city, and I think was the first city-state, was Uruk.
That we found.
And that's estimated that it was 4,000 or 3,100 BC. So it's quite a big turnaround from Adam and Eve to then have the city in Uruk.
No, it was, I think their grandson was making things with metal and all that. Hold on. I'd have to find it. Where was... Oh, boy. I don't know where it was. But, yeah, I think it was like their grandson was already working with metals.
Mm.
And if Adam lived for 900 years, then he would have lived to see the first major city. Yeah.
Okay, so you're assuming Adam and Eve are having a active sex life right up until menopause, which is delayed for as long as their lifetime is.
I don't know how long it was delayed, no, but you had yeah,
If you're
you
living
have in the
900
genealogy
years
that people
instead
are
of being 50, it's plausibly 500 years, for example.
yes, I think Noah was 500 years old when he had his sons or something. I don't remember where it was, but yes, they were. The genealogy showed that they were still having kids, yeah, up to 500 years old,
Yes. Okay.
and they didn't have birth control back then. Just saying.
Oh no. But where's the stuff about Jericho?
Sorry, I think my throat's not used to
we've
this
got
much
some
talking.
first comments in the-
Oh.
I think it's a question for you, Liz.
Oh, yeah, but hello. I don't think it's a question, but yeah, thank you.
Oh no, it's great. I misread it as "Are you coming on this week's unpopular opinions?"
I don't know what's happening with unpopular opinions at this point. And yeah, I haven't been on lately just because I've been so busy with work. But yeah,
Fair enough.
we'll see.
So Jericho, that lovely city with the nice big walls that fall down with trumpets, located in the West Bank, is, although it was only a town, certainly in the early days, I think even today it's still thought of as town-sized rather than city, is thought to have been founded at about 9000 BC.
And are they basing that on carbon dating?
Well, I'm not sure what they're basing it on, but there's just a few old settlement, because there seems to have been a large Bronze Age expansion of settlements around 4000 BC, give or take.
Which would fit.
And I think early Egypt as well.
Yeah,
but
it would fit, again, what the Bible says.
Anyway,
we have been. I'm sorry to the person who apparently just dropped in, but we have actually been going for quite a while.
An hour and 12 minutes. This has been informative in seeing your thinking and holding each line to a higher standard than I have been.
And it's important to remember when reading the Bible that it is, yeah, as you said, it's not all written by one person. It's written by a lot of different people, all assembled together into one book. And you have in there, you have books of poetry, you have books of prophecy, and you have books of history, you have books of laws, you have books of philosophy, essentially. And so you can't take one method of interpretation and read the whole book that way. You can't say, this is... I had someone tell me that. Well, I read the whole Bible literally. Like, have you read Song of Solomon? Seriously, do you read that literally? Don't. Just don't. I mean, have you read Song of Solomon?
I don't think so.
What'd you say?
No, I've mostly only read Genesis, Exodus, Isaiah, the occasional Psalm, and the New Testament. So just the typical Catholic stuff. Focus on the New Testament and the bit in the Old that give the new credibility.
Yeah, apparently the first monk who translated Song of Solomon was actually excommunicated because it's a book written by a lover to his lover, and he's describing her. And he starts with the head and goes down. I don't think he gets past the waist, but I'm not sure. I can't remember. Anyway, but he uses a lot of similes. He's like, your neck is like a pillar of what is it, like a pillar of marble or something, which, okay, I mean, I guess in that day and age, and I don't know if he's describing how smooth and pretty or something. Yes, probably. Anyway, but again, you wouldn't read that literally. It's like he's not making love to a statue here. I think he says her breasts are like a fleet of lambs running over a hill or something like that. I don't remember. It's something bizarre, which yeah, it doesn't mean much to us nowadays, but I'm guessing that was a compliment back in his day. But then you read the Psalms, and he's like, there was one actually point where he says, "Enemies have fenced me in, and dragons surround me." Well, he's not literally saying dragons are there. It's a psalm. It's poetry. It's
what's to stop saying Genesis 1 is poetry?
Well, I'm getting to that too. What you then have, like, I would say Judges. If you read that, that's clearly history, where it's saying this man rose up and he became and he defeated this many people using this method, and so then he gathered this tribe and that tribe together, and they went and did this. You can say this is history. So, and you read Revelation. Clearly, it's prophecy.
Some guy on drugs.
We get into that another time. But so you have to look at each book and understand what is I hate to say literary style, but it's like, what are they communicating and in what method are they communicating? Is it poetry? Is it Psalms? Is it philosophy? I mean, Proverbs, that's a book of philosophy, essentially, which it's truth, but it's written as philosophy. Genesis, if you read the whole thing, it is very clearly history. It's an account of what happened. It's an historical account. So you can't look at Genesis and say, oh, well, this is we should interpret this the same way we interpret Psalms. No, Psalms is poetry. Genesis is history. You don't interpret them the same. So that's what I'm saying. When people want to say, oh, well, you can't interpret the Bible literally. It's like parts of it you don't interpret literally because they're not intended to be interpreted literally. But you also don't just pick and choose. It's like, well, this account I'm going to interpret this way. This account I'm going to interpret that way. You need to look at the books. The first 5 books were written by Moses, and they were meant to be a history from creation to when the Israelites entered the Promised Land. It was a history for the Jews, a history of their people. Where did we come from? Where are we going to? What is our purpose for being? So the first 5 books are all history and law. Leviticus and Deuteronomy are law. They're less history, they're more law, even though they have some history in there. So you have to look at that when reading it. And too many people don't read the Bible in full books. They will just read an account. They'll just say, oh, I'm just reading the story of Cain and Abel. I'm reading the story of David and Goliath. It's like, no, pick an entire book and read the whole book from start to finish. And then you get a better idea, a much better understanding of it too. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, there we go. Anyway, I should probably get going because I should get back to work.
Something that I wish creationists talked about more on the internet wasn't bananas, and aren't they wonderful how they fit the hand, but pandas.
Okay.
How the fudge did pandas evolve? It's miraculous they even exist.
Well,
I think they barely breed. They eat bamboo, but they've got the digestive system of a carnivore.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just how? Why? How is this advantageous in any way to anything that could have existed beforehand that it's evolved from? What
An even better one, though, is the duck-billed platypus. Look at the duck-billed platypus. Are you familiar with that?
I'm familiar of it looking weird. I'm not familiar of it appearing inconsistent and...
It's a mammal that lays eggs.
Yes. And
it doesn't give birth to live young. It lays eggs.
Yes, it's classified as a mammal because it produces milk, but it lays eggs.
Yes. Well, it's furry. It's warm-blooded, and yet it has a bill of a duck. It has claws that are poisonous. It's like, what is this thing?
It's a weird animal, but I don't think you look at a platypus and you go, this looks nothing like anything else. But
yes,
you don't look at a platypus and go, how on earth do you exist? You should have gone extinct as soon as you were born. It's miraculous that there are any of you alive. How would you exist? Whereas a panda, there is a reason they're endangered.
Yeah. And also, what's interesting is if you look at one thing I like to point out is there are historical accounts, mostly in Asia, less so in Europe and the US, but there are historical accounts of dragons, literal fire-breathing dragons in Asia, and it's not myth. In Europe, it's mostly mythology. Although you have some that you could say they might be historical, but they're usually more mythological. But in Asia, they actually have history. There was apparently up until, I don't know, like the 1800s, where there was an actual one of the positions in the castle. You had the different people who were in charge of different things. There was the dragon. The person in charge of raising the dragons, the king actually, or not the king, the emperor, whatever, had pet dragons, actual fire-breathing dragons. So you can find dragons in actual history, not just mythology. So there are a lot of things.
But it's also in Asia where you have things like Komodo dragons, so you have absolutely huge lizards.
Yes. Oh, my brother had tegu, or two of them actually, which they're not quite as large as a Komodo dragon, but they're huge.
Yes.
I got to hold her. She was so. It's like holding a massive beaded purse.
Yeah, that's big.
Sorry?
Monitor lizard.
Is that the same as a tegu?
I'm not sure,
Okay.
but
I know. I don't know all of the different types.
Slithering.
Yeah, the tegus are so cute, and I wouldn't. I don't want anything that I have to feed mammals to. I feed bugs to my dragons. I don't want something big enough that I have to feed mice to it. I'm like, nope. That's. I love I like the lizard, but I'm not gonna anything that I have to feed mammals to. Nope, I'm not doing that. That bothers me. Anyway, sorry, I'm getting sidetracked again. But yeah, there are so many accounts that we have of essentially dragons living with humans, and dragons, I should say dinosaurs, actually, because dragons, if you go back in history, they didn't have the word dinosaur. That's a modern word. They would have said dragon. If it's a giant lizard, it's a dragon.
What about the dinosaurs is what makes us say they're lizards? Because they seem much closer to flightless birds than lizards.
Well, again, if you go with the theory of the vapor canopy before the flood, then it also explains why all of the dinosaurs apparently died off before humans were that significant. Because once the vapor canopy fell, the lizards just didn't live as long. So the dinosaurs that we see could just be normal lizards that just grew that big.
So if there was, sorry, to go back to the whole sin stuff, if there's no death before there was sin, what did the carnivorous dinosaurs eat?
They would have all been herbivores,
so
if that was the case.
They were herbivores, and then they acquired the taste for flesh later.
It would have. My theory, and it is a theory because it's not written in scripture. My theory is that all of the animals were herbivores, and that God changed them, made some become carnivores after the fact. And the panda was just one that didn't. It stayed an herbivore.
Well, yes.
Who knows? Because you do have that. You have things
sensible and turned it into the panda just to confuse us.
Yeah. There are some things out there that just don't make sense. Like the planets. I remember reading about that. I took an astronomy course, and I hate college because you have to take all these courses that have absolutely nothing to do with your degree, but you're forced to take them.
Should have come to the UK. Our college is cheaper.
And you know what's funny? There's a black pastor that I really like, and he has a degree from Oxford, and he's an American pastor. He was raised in Southern California or something, but he says the reason he went to Oxford for his degree was because he didn't want anyone to be able to say that he only got in through affirmative action. Yeah, I had to laugh about that. I'm like, you don't know how it works in the UK, do you? It was just because he said if I had a degree from any college in America, people might assume I just got it through affirmative action because they, go out of their way to get more black people in. And anyway, but I mean, I know the UK apparently does the same in many cases.
Moving towards that, there's a high-profile black politician who went to Harvard, and has seemed to have adopted the American racial politics.
Okay, so it's new
And
though.
so our politics is becoming more Americanized.
Hmm.
But if you ever want to see quite how different and not racist the UK has been towards black people, there's two things that are quite funny. One is an interview with Sir Oswald Mosley, who was a Labour MP, so a socialist, who then became the founder of the British Union of Fascists. As he says, no, we weren't racist. We couldn't be. Britain was the head of a multiracial empire. Racism wouldn't work.
You could still be racist and have it.
Well, yes, but we couldn't be racist. He was famously racist and had lots of issues with Jewish people.
Ah, okay.
But you wouldn't. Britain would break down if we were racist towards black people and brown people. And the other one is an educational film made for American servicemen before they're sent to the UK, and say, don't be offended when a British woman asks you over for tea and does the same to a Negro.
Okay.
Good Negro GI. Don't be
Yeah,
offended.
but
It's normal that you're viewed the same there.
yeah, but by the time you said in which war? Which
World
war?
War
World War II?
I think it might have been.
Yeah,
World
that
War
would have been. I guess if it was government made, yeah. I mean, the
Yeah.
laws. Also, I guess it would depend on what part of the U.S. they were from, because interestingly enough, the South is condemned for being more racist, but I've spoken with a lot of people from both the South and the North, and one thing most Northerners have told me is that no, Northerners are actually more racist. The difference is they don't mix. Up in the North, the blacks have their areas and the whites have their areas, and they just don't mix. Whereas in the South, it's all mixed together. So if someone's racist, it comes out a lot more in the South because they actually are interacting with people of other races. Whereas in the North, apparently they really don't in general. At least in the big cities, they don't mix.
Yeah.
So you could be as racist as you want, and nobody would ever know it.
And I've heard someone describe saying that what's it of independence?
The
for
Declaration
America.
of Independence?
Declaration of Independence. Part of it says we want to be more mean to the Indians.
More mean to the Indians?
Well, not more mean.
Oh,
British
no.
understatement. We want to do more to the Indians. The British Crown is stopping us.
No, not exactly. Yes, the Declaration of Independence did call out the king on that because the Indians were coming in and raiding like farms and ranches and everything, and the king was saying you can't retaliate. You can't. Essentially, you can't fight back. Kind of like nowadays with the riots and everything, and the government is saying you can't fight back. You can't defend yourself. That was apparently going on with the Indians and the ranchers, and they were upset about that and said, no, if they're coming in and stealing our cattle or killing our wives, we should be able to fight back. We should be able to assemble a posse and go in and drive out these tribes that are doing this. So it wasn't saying we should be able to do more to the Indians. It was saying we should be able to defend ourselves better.
Drive out the violent ones that are nicking our cows.
Sorry?
And our women. Drive out the violent ones nicking our cows and our women.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, the Indians in North America, they were not one unified nation.
No, they weren't. No.
There were so many tribes, and they would kill each other and eat each other and enslave each other. I mean, this was normal.
During the arrival of the white man, they were killing each other and invading each other's territory.
Right, and that was normal life for them. So each tribe, so when the white men came in, it's like the white men were just another tribe that some of the tribes would make treaties with and say, oh yeah, hey, you guys are a strong tribe, we want to be friends with you. And others were like, you're an enemy, you're not us, we're going to kill you. So you had great Indians and you had bad Indians. And when the king was saying, okay, you can't fight any of them, you need to just back off and leave them alone. Like, wait, but they are coming and killing us. That's not okay. So I think that's one issue too, when I guess it's like nowadays when, or when people say, "Oh, these people are horrible," it's like, "Oh, are you saying all black people are horrible?" No, I'm saying these rioters. Yeah, but a lot of these rioters are black, so you hate all black people. No, I hate rioters. I don't care what race they are. And I think he had a similar thing back then. Even though we know how to distinguish a little better nowadays, so in our words, be a little more careful. They would say things like that. The savages who are attacking us and be like, "You hate all Indians." No, I hate the savages who are attacking us.
Yes.
So but yeah, I mean, from the earliest point, the settlers worked with the Indians. The very first Thanksgiving was the settlers and the Indians together in peace and harmony. It was helping each other. So yeah, anyway, we're getting way off topic again.
We never had slavery. We just flogged them to you. Well, in mainland UK, with the exception of the Vikings, never had slavery in Great Britain.
Yeah.
It was only in the Empire, because the Empire was given quite a bit of freedom, something that the Americans seem to neglect. Is you had quite a bit of freedom separate from the UK, were allowed slavery.
Yeah, the colonies. We were originally a colony.
Yes.
So yeah. It's. I mean, every nation is different. Every people group is different.
1807, we banned slavery in the colonies, and then by 1811, we stopped trafficking them, to banned transport and trade of slaves with our own colonies. And then by 1830, we decided to just go full SJW and try and stop the entire global slave trade, starting with West Africa.
Which you failed, by the way, because slavery still exists.
Yes.
But anyway, it's kind of like America.
Had to free slaves rather than just buy them. Because it apparently caused a policy change in the South.
Sorry.
The South Sea Fleet, South Africa Squadron, or whatever it's called, going around and confiscating slave ships, no matter the flag they carried, caused enough issue for the South that they'd consciously try and the slave owners would encourage the slaves to mate to try and keep the population up rather than just letting them breed when they want to and buying them when they want more.
Yeah.
I
know there's a lot of bad stuff that went on. I got into a Facebook debate with my brother-in-law. Asked me he's like, "Elizabeth, come here. Can you help me out with this debate?" I'm like, "Oh boy." And there was somebody who was saying that, America was so horrible because of slavery. And I'm like, okay, we weren't the first to have slaves. We weren't the last to have slaves. We were one of the only ones that fought a bloody war, killing our own people in order to get rid of slavery. They're like, yeah, but slavery in America was the worst in the whole world. I'm like, what? No, it wasn't. Not even close. And she's like, read this. Well, it posted a letter of a guy just describing how you should treat the slaves, and it was absolutely horrific. I couldn't read the whole thing. I thought I was going to be sick. It was so horrible. And he said, this is a letter to the slavers in Virginia, and I was like, at first I was just like, whoa. And I thought, okay, I'm sure if that happened in America, I would have read about it somewhere in history, and I would have remembered that. That's something I would have remembered. But then I went back and reread the beginning of the letter and realized something I'd missed because I had just been skimming over it. Because I was just, like, I don't know if this is going to be any worth reading. But at the beginning of the letter, the guy says, I have all these, the guy is from the West Indies. And he's like, I have all these slave plantations in the West Indies and my slaves are obedient. He said, the reason you guys are having so much trouble with your slaves is you're too nice to them. Here's what you need to do. And I'm like, okay, this literally says America was nice.
To an American.
What'd you say?
He's not American. He's giving advice to an American.
Right. So I went back to him like, this is an historical document saying that Americans were too nice to their slaves, and that's why they had problems with them. And a person just got mad and yelled at me, and I don't know if they blocked me. But
remember the passage in the Bible with the master who gives 3 of his slaves some money? It says, look after it for it, and he comes back in a month or something, or some period of time.
No,
and one of them was, anyway.
But yes,
One of them sticks it in the ground. Another one tries to make money with it, but only makes the money back.
Mhm.
And another one tries making money and he succeeds.
Mhm.
He seems to sack the one who the guy who put it in the ground loses his job.
Yeah. Well,
And I was just thinking, with this parable, what would the guy have done if the second guy had tried to make money, but he did even worse and he'd lost some of it?
he probably would have lost his job also, because the idea was to find out which one could handle the money well. And if you tried and then lost it, it means that either you have bad luck or you're a bad manager. And in either case, I don't want to give you my money. That would be my interpretation as a business owner.
Yes. Because I think it explicitly calls the one who put it in the ground lazy and things and compliments the other two.
Yeah.
And I was just wondering, what would he have said to the guy who tried to make money but failed?
He probably wouldn't. He wouldn't be upset with him because at least he tried. But he probably wouldn't give him any more money because it's like, no, sorry. If you're just going to lose it, I'm not going to give you more.
Fair enough. You can have a pay cut. The others get a promotion. Okay. Well,
it wasn't. It wasn't that. It's hard to say. I don't think that it was that he just gave them money and it was theirs. I think he gave them money to do something with it, yes, and that they were to give it back when he got back. And so the one that increased it the most,
savings account,
yeah,
with
because
his slaves.
It even says the one who he gave him 10 talents and he made 20, he made 10 more, so he had 20 or something, and he said, okay, I'm going to put you in charge of 10 cities. So essentially made him a governor, because it's like, so you were successful in your endeavor. And then the one who was just like, yeah, I didn't do anything with it, I just buried it in the ground, so here you go, here's your money back. You're like, you're fired. What's the point? Why am I paying for your food if you're doing nothing? Go away. You know. Anyway, it's but regardless, I really should, because I need to do work this weekend, so I should get back to work.
Insightful talking to you.
Yes, good talking to you too, and maybe we could have a follow-up conversation sometime if we wanted about the science, but I don't know if I could even find some of that stuff.
How to falsify evolution. We can set ourselves a series of hypotheses and go, right, if we can find X, Y, and Z.
But again, it's I studied this back in college, and it's about, not in college, but in that time period of my life. And I remember reading them saying, if we found this, like if we found the rock layers, you know, because you can tell. You can tell how old the rock layers are by the fossils in it. If we found rock layers where we had a rock layer with this fossil in it and then a rock layer underneath with this fossil in it, that would completely disprove it. Well, they found that in the Grand Canyon. There was a section there where the rock layers were essentially inverted. You had the fossils all going in the wrong order, and they were just like, oh well. Nah. That one I don't think they ever explain. They just ignore.
Well, you get big volcano or something, sticks a big chunk of rock in the air and it flips over and it lands upside down.
Yeah, well, see, there you go. Again,
there are geological things that can move and flip rocks.
That's my point, is they will say, if we were to find this, it would disprove it. And then you find that and they're like, well, we can still make it work.
Possible reason why that could happen.
Exactly. There is no way to falsify evolution. No matter what you say, it's like there is. In talking with my atheist friend, when I said, look,
with that attitude, I will not say that is true for all people and all scientists, but there are certainly people out there with that attitude of this must be true, everything must fit it. A bit like a lot of the flat earthers.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a lot of respect for. We'll come up with a hypothesis, we'll test it, they'll prove themselves wrong, and then they'll just try and fudge everything to fit it, rather than just going, this fits a spherical Earth, even though all their experiments are pointing that way.
Yeah. But again, I have never met anyone who believes in evolution who will accept any evidence to the contrary.
Well,
anyway,
maybe you found your first.
Maybe, but you still haven't told me what you would accept as evidence to the contrary. Anyway,
Well,
that's a conversation for another time.
that coexisting mankind and things we believe went extinct before mankind, like dinosaurs.
Well, okay. There's one thing that's very easy, to be honest. Is there's some. It's like it's a I always get the name wrong. It's not a troglodyte. It's a something, but it sounds like that. It's the word kind of sounds like that, but it's some prehistoric sea thing. It's a small thing that trilobite, maybe. I can't remember. Might have been a trilobite. The word sounds something like that. I don't remember what the word is. But there was, yeah, those things, and they found a fossilized footprint of a man who had stepped on one of these things and crushed it. So it was the footprint of a human man crushing one of these prehistoric fish. And I can't remember. I saw several different people trying to explain this fossil away. And nowadays people will just say, oh, it's fake. It's not real. I'm like, no,
if that is real. That does put spanners in the works.
Yeah, but they find these evidences against, and people will either say, no, it's fake. I refuse to believe it's real. It can't be real. Or, oh, well, see, maybe the rock got heated up from something, and so when he stepped on it, it actually crushed a fossil, not the actual. They won't accept evidence. There is no evidence you can give them. They won't accept it.
Would you not say the same thing about yourself with other evidence, like cities that are old and radio dating and that sort of thing?
The difference there is that what I believe is a religion.
Yes.
Evolution is supposedly not a religion. If you want to accept that evolution is a religion, then I'm fine with you saying there's nothing that can disprove it. I do believe it is a religion, just because of the fact that there is no evidence that anyone that I have ever met. I've never met anyone who will accept any evidence to the contrary. So it is a religion. It's when you say, no, this is a scientific theory. I'm like, no, it's not. I don't believe you. You're a liar, because there is nothing you will accept that will disprove it.
There are plenty of people that will have long spieling hours on the Discovery Channel and other such things, so I would say put a lot of religiously attach the idea of trying to smear out any space where God could be, and will hold to their beliefs as if it's a religion, and come up with things like the multiverse, which they will wholly admit we have no evidence for, and only seems to exist as a means of going, because you can't have something happening spontaneously one-off for no reason from nothing. There is either some unknown thing happening beforehand creating all these events, or there is a sentient being that decided to create it, the creator, God. And so they just go, there must be a multiple universes.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. I have never met anyone who believes in evolution who will accept any evidence to the contrary. When it comes down to it, there was one person actually, or not even actually, I think it was a group with the fossil I mentioned that I said it was a human footprint. It was not a human foot. It was a human footprint. The person was wearing shoes. It actually has the treads in there, so it is very obviously human. And there were some people who couldn't disprove it. They were just like, okay, this is real. This is clearly a human foot humanoid, I guess, foot that crushed this thing. So their interpretation was, this is evidence that aliens came to Earth way back when. That was actually their theory. As I said, that's the only thing that works. They will reach for anything. There is no way to disprove the theory of evolution. I've never met anyone who believes in evolution who will accept any evidence to the contrary. So anyway, feel free to think about that. Think about what you would accept as evidence to the contrary, and maybe we can have another discussion another time. But
Yes.
I really do need to get to work.
Well, goodbye. Enjoy your
All
work.
right. All right. Thank you. And I will talk to you later.